I am.
All right. Sir, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Start your timer
Okay,
now.
thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much for the previous presentation put on by my neighbors in Renfrew, very close to my residence. My name is Les Saleh. I was born in Calgary in 1955 and have been a long-term landowner in Renfrew on 8th Avenue. Mayor Nenshi and City of Calgary councillors, after listening for the last 3 days, this review truly leaves me with several questions. We live in a city in which 1/3 of the downtown core remains empty due to an economy decimated by commercial firm failures, amalgamations, and extensive job losses. The assessed value of downtown commercial buildings has fallen sharply, leading to revenue loss for the city and the resultant transfer of tax burden to commercial and residential properties outside the downtown core. Why has the city not aggressively reduced their yearly operating budget by 1/3 to accommodate the revenue loss? Why has the city not investigated to the extent expended on the new North Hill LAP the conversion of hundreds of thousands of square feet of surplus commercial lease space to condominium residential development? What economic driver exists in Calgary, specifically new jobs? What have been added to justify an influx of additional residents to occupy all of the new density being proposed in the new LAP? All of the neighborhoods combined in this LAP. What individual stakeholder input has the city received from impacted property owners as opposed to input forms being sent in by one or two individuals from the Renfrew Community Association, who did not even bother to solicit any truly direct input from landowners? What gives the City of Calgary the moral right to introduce a density increase to 46 people on a corner, previously single-family residential lot, leaving the adjacent next-door neighbor, myself, wondering what became of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the enjoyment of private property? We have a great opportunity lost here. 40-story, vacant, high-rise, converted buildings, one of which I used to work in, could easily be converted to 8 units per floor, 320 condominium units. The density added exactly where it belongs, in downtown Calgary, which is dying. Secure access to 6 elevators, each floor, full commercial kitchens already in place, 4 per floor, fabulous views, lots of sunlight, a large food court, a large eating area, meeting rooms, which hopefully after this coronavirus subsides could become theaters, plus 15 access in both directions, 6 levels of underground parking connected to Centennial Parkade and access to Calgary amenities at minus 40 Celsius that allow you to enjoy the vitality of our downtown in the middle of winter in your shirt sleeves. Instead, you have chosen to densify Renfrew. What person would really want to live in a downstairs, small-size unit and have nothing but a bicycle and a $400 a year monthly allowance to get a bus pass, walk a good walk in the middle of winter to stand in an unheated bus shelter, waiting for the Renfrew bus to come by once every 40 minutes? I'd truly like you to think about these questions and come up with some answers. I've had a property approved next door to us that's going to have 6 3-bedroom units. So we now have 18 combined garbage cans, recycle, and compost containers for those units, 5 more micro suites for another 3 each, another 15. Tell me, how is that going to work? 18 and 15 compost bins, recycle, and garbage containers on pickup day.
Mr. Slay, I just want to let you know you're at time, so I'll ask you please to wrap up in a sentence.
You bet. The other thing that we're going to have to put up with is shade the entire day long. We used to enjoy a west view of
Sir, it sounds
sunshine.
like you're going off on a new tangent. Really, one sentence.
One sentence.
Yes, please.
I would truly like to understand how much effort has been put into looking into solving the downtown problem instead of densification in Renfrew. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Let's go to Ms. Waldy. Megan, are you there?
Yes, Your Worship.
The floor is yours.
Hi. Thank you, Your Worship and City Councillors. My name is Megan Waldy. I've been a proud resident of Renfrew for over 6 years. I moved to Calgary as a recent graduate and have since started my career and now my family here, and I could not picture my life anywhere else. I love Calgary. That being said, I agree and support with the North Hill local area plan, most of it. I am excited about the potential growth and redevelopment to improve our already great neighborhood, but it needs further public engagement and small but critical amendments before we make it part of law. I hear that Mount Pleasant had thorough engagement strategies, but Renfrew did not, and we did not have mail-outs and social media posts and the other strategies that she listed. And hearing the earlier presenter describe that 45 out of 50 people that are directly impacted never having heard about it is not acceptable. While I agree with the earlier presenters that all of the connector streets in the middle of the neighborhood should be reduced in height, there is one specific spot that I want to focus on as critical to reduce, where I feel the bigger picture of density has literally overshadowed the intricate details of Renfrew and what makes it great. That is the proposal of 6-story buildings along 8th Avenue, specifically between 6th Street Northeast and 8th Street Northeast. This has been labeled as a community connector road, but truly this section is right in the heart of residential Renfrew. To be clear, I do not live on this street personally, so it is not about me only protecting myself. As you may or may not know, this section of road consists of mostly single-story bungalows on the south side, where the LAP is now suggesting 6-story buildings. And on the north side is a toddler playground, an outdoor community ice rink, a schoolyard, and a baseball diamond. And should 6-story buildings be approved for the south side of that street as proposed, these outdoor recreation areas that are heavily used all year round on a daily basis by our community and surrounding communities will be partially or even fully shaded at various times of the year. As fellow Calgary residents, I don't need to tell you how important the sun is for providing sometimes the only respite to our cold, long Calgary winters that make it tolerable to be outside and be active, especially for the toddlers and young children that use this space daily all year round. Yes, there is some reference to shade studies in the guidebook in North Hill LAP, but as others have pointed out, it is vague, non-committal, and open to the interpretation for developers. My concerns with this strategy of shading studies are many. First, are they mandatory? Are they required to be done in winter when the sun is at its lowest? Because they would be completely irrelevant if done in the summer when the sun is directly overhead. And these areas are heavily used still in winter. And what percentage or duration of shade are you saying is allowed? All of these factors make the proposal of relying on shade studies far too dangerous. If we do not reduce the number of stories at least in this small section along 8th Avenue between 6th Street and 8th Street Northeast now, before this LAP is approved, it could severely and detrimentally shade these areas and destroy the few outdoor spaces the people of Renfrew and surrounding communities love and enjoy. Amendments such as these need to be made prior to approval because, as the creators of the guidebook said themselves in their presentation, and I quote, "Policy and implementation is happening in real time," unquote. And we have the opportunity now to make it right before it's too late. There were also many comments by the guidebook creators and supporters that once you get to the LAP stage, it would be a very thoughtful and detailed process, which would focus on increasing density where it makes sense. There are so many other areas of Renfrew slotted to increase density that do make sense, and I fully support. Edmonton Trail, 16th Ave, around the indoor recreation facilities that would not be impacted by shade. Renfrew Drive, that's adjacent to 16th Ave, across from Midfield Park, which will also be higher density. Please, 8th Avenue, particularly this section in between 6th Street and 8th Street Northeast, does not make sense. I also wanted to highlight, as others did, that all the other communities in the North Hill Plan have maybe 1 or 2 connector streets with 6 stories. Renfrew has been heavily targeted with over 7 residential streets right in the middle of the community with this level of density in a comparable amount of area. Ms. Swill's concern regarding connector streets in the very thoughtful discussion at the end of the guidebook hearing was speaking to exactly this situation. And I hope that our community's voices are going to be heard, as you guys say they would in regards to the guidebook. Frankly, I would worry if I was other neighborhoods about what is going to be designated a connector street. So please, I ask you, your worship and councillors, please strongly consider making this small but critical amendment to just reduce the height of the structures on these residential streets, even by just a few stories, and at least in this section, so that these green spaces can be continued to be enjoyed by all of the increasing population that I welcome to join our great community. We are not asking to be limited to single detached. We are asking for very reasonable compromises for the very welcome density and diversity in this neighborhood. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. I was just about to say you're out of time, but that was...
I know.
That was very helpful. Thank you very much for that. Can we go to Ms. Bemrose, please? Are you there?
I am. Thank you. And
Please
thank you,
go
Your
ahead.
Worship and Council. Oh, thank you. And good afternoon. My name is Maddie Bemrose, and I'm speaking today as another resident of Renfrew, which resides on traditional Blackfoot territory. An important thing to consider is issues of post-colonialism heritage and character have often been referred to over the past 3 days. I've spent time listening here and engaging with my community on North Hill Plan, and that has led me to reread an article by Flavia Zodan titled "My Feminism Will Be Intersectional or It Will Be Bull." I reflected on how we also need to be looking at planning in a city through an intersectional lens, or it will be bull. And by that I mean undesirable to investors, seniors, young people, tourism, immigrants, and will continue to perpetuate race and socioeconomic inequalities. While the guidebook and the North Hill Plan don't directly solve planning from an intersectional lens, both documents do set the stage for a more holistic approach to development. I fully support increased density proposed by the North Hill Plan in my community, but this must be done in conjunction with improved infrastructure, including Main Street funding for Edmonton Trail, funding for Unite the Heights along 8th Ave, a new community building and rec center in Renfrew, and of course, the Green Line. I realize these requests are budget items and not the plan in discussion today, but if Council approves this plan, they must do so in good faith that they will also increase infrastructure spending in the inner city and vote against suburban sprawl. Additionally, I hope that the city continues to work with the province to fund more low-income and senior housing in the North Hill area. North Hill Plan is decades overdue and has led to decades of underfunding the inner city. The evidence of it in the collapsed rec center roof, the lack of safe and usable bike lanes, a community association building that has been deemed unfit for inhabitants due to structural issues, and a long stretch of 16th Avenue that looks more like a scene from a bad 80s movie than a desirable metropolitan city. The North Hill Plan sets the foundation for increasing diversity in the inner city, and if approved, I hope it is implemented in a way that ensures that. Specifically regards to the plan, I'd like to point out the inequalities of the proposed increased density. Some communities along the same latitudes as Renfrew with equal or better access to services, including transit, are remaining low density, including the community adjacent to SAIT and Alberta's University of the Arts. I can't fathom why, from a planning perspective, this would have been done, except for rejection of ideas by members of that community. When formally accepting the North Hill Plan, I hope an amendment can be made to correct this wrong and to account for the voices who weren't represented, including students and individuals and families who can't afford to rent a single-family home in the area, let alone ever purchase one. This exclusivity of increasing density in some areas of the North Hill Plan is basically a way of saying this community is only for specific socioeconomic statuses. By allowing increased density in all areas of the North Hill Plan equally, we are telling Calgarians that they belong everywhere in the North Hill area. I originally wanted to say Calgary, but those restrictive covenants, the proposed amendment for single detached homes, and what we have heard over the past 3 days has made this totally unrealistic, but I digress. I've immersed myself in the opposition, and I've heard reasons for objections to this plan, and frankly, it has been fraught with misinformation and entitlement. It should go without saying, but I suppose it doesn't, that when you purchase a home, no one makes a promise to you that the way your street looks and your community looks today is what it's going to look like in 10, 20, 50 years, nor should it. Communities change, we evolve and grow, and it's all good and sustainable societies have done since the existence of time. Continued suburban sprawl is simply not economically, socially, or environmentally sustainable. It is clear that there was a lot of thought and evidence-based information put into the creation of these documents. I strongly encourage Council to consider the message it sends to the professionals who have devoted their lives to being the experts in urban planning and to the volunteers of this great city who contributed important local knowledge if you vote down these plans. I'd like to end my time by thanking the City of Calgary staff who have worked tirelessly on the North Hill Plan and broader guidebook. And maybe most importantly, I want to express my immense gratitude for the volunteers who have spent years fully engaged on this project. And most specifically, to the volunteers in Renfrew who ensured communication around the North Hill Plan was distributed. It was distributed online, in e-blast, through neighborhood signage, an open house hosted at the CA, and in paper newsletters delivered to every home in Renfrew multiple times. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Bemrose. Let us go to Kelly Page, please. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Councillors, and fellow Calgarians. Thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective today. My name is Kelly Page, and I also live in the community of Renfrew. It seems to be the community on the board today. We have heard numerous assurances of late that the guidebook and the local area plans provide each individual community in Calgary with a recipe for pizza, but frankly, in my experience, the ads were very unclear, so much so that most residents didn't even know to put their order in. So now many Renfrew residents are stuck with a pizza that we find unpalatable. There's been a lot of emphasis put on creating equality, diversity, and inclusion in our city, which thankfully seems to be a goal that most of us agree on, although it does seem that we disagree on how to get there. I've heard a lot of theoretical and philosophical discussions about the recommendations over the past 2 days, but I want to talk about what I actually see happening already in my community as a result of the proposed local area plan. As one of my neighbors, Les, just spoke about in great detail, a developer was recently emboldened by the proposed plan to build 11 units on a single 50-foot lot without really considering the significant negative impact to the adjacent neighbors. In my opinion, this plan paves the way for developers but offers little recourse for existing residents. This development was approved before either the guidebook or the local area plan went before council, and I can only imagine the speed of development following an approval. The current bungalow I just described, along with many others in our neighborhood, have been affordable housing options for years. In my view, this plan actually reinforces inequality across neighborhoods and specifically in Renfrew by displacing these low-income options that people choose to rent, replacing it with new apartment blocks that are not built with the intention of affordability. Density alone does not equate to affordability. I ask the question, who are we displacing to provide housing options for others? I personally find it an insult to assume that lower income, perhaps less privileged families should only be offered the opportunity to live in a multi-story apartment block. The neighbors on my block who happen to be visible minorities are soon to be evicted to allow for the new 11 units to be built. Make no mistake, the developer is not building affordable housing in this case to support a less privileged population or even as a green building initiative. The goal is, of course, to maximize profitability by building as many rental units on a single lot as is possible. The local area plan has been disingenuously communicated as an ideal vision, but has demonstrated a lack of transparency for the reality of how drastically this will change our neighborhood. It is a myth that the community has been widely consulted. Instead, it is a very small group of individuals who support this vision for our community, and I'm quite certain that not one of them live on a connector street, which are the most affected. Who decides where development makes sense? After all, it's easy to support a plan when you won't be personally impacted by it. I've gone door to door and spoken to about 40 neighbors along 7th and 8th Avenue, and only one out of the 40 was in support of allowing up to 6-story buildings on our connector streets. The vast majority had never heard of the local area plan, and of the few that had, many were confused by the name and didn't realize that it included Renfrew. Even a few members sitting on the board of the community association were unaware of the 6-story component until a month ago. This is undeniably a disconnect between the city administration's attempts to broadly engage the residents of Renfrew and the reality of what actually happened. Renfrew is currently a diverse community with a variety of housing options, with a rental rate 45% higher than the city's average and a below median income. We welcome new people and housing forms, but not the drastic jump from 2 to 6 stories on what I estimate to be 25% of our community streets. I recognize the need for planners to look at data points, logistics, and flow when planning for future development, but what's missing in this analysis are the real people's lives that are affected by it. 98% of our sample group, which is of over 300 residents in Renfrew, signed a petition opposing 6-story construction on our neighborhood connectors. This is clearly not what the majority of residents in Renfrew want. I respectfully request that Council include an amendment to this local area plan, which will allow for contextual development with clear parameters on the neighborhood connector streets, namely that they are not to be treated like main streets and that there be a maximum allowable height differential of 2 stories to neighboring homes on the block. This allows for height that can grow as the community and street grows, but doesn't radically change and displace people along the way. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Ms. Page. Right on 5 minutes and some very insightful comments. I really appreciated that. Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Lockerbie, please. And I believe you have a presentation, sir.
I do. I'm going to start on slide 2, introduction.
Okay, give us a moment. Give us a moment to get it on. Give us a moment to get it up on the screen here, and we will go from there. And it's up, and we'll start you on slide 2.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council, for your time and attention today. My name is Ian Lockerbie. I'm not in favor of the plan due to issues with inclusiveness in the design and the process. It's bizarre. It's a little bizarre to be critiquing a plan that's based on a guidebook that isn't approved, and we don't know what amendments might be made. But the city appears to be in a big hurry, so yeah, let's do this. I've been proud to call Renfrew home for 21 years. I've seen the community and its density grow significantly and organically, with building forms that fit into the residential feel and provide a mix of housing opportunities for all income levels. It's a diverse inner-city neighborhood with a wonderful mix of old homes, new homes, condos, townhouses, duplexes, row houses, renters, homeowners, low income, and high income. I'm concerned that this plan does not achieve its goals and the goals of the guidebook and will actually increase disparity. The process of developing the plan has ignored contrarian voices, and this is highlighted even at this late stage of the process. I try to be part of the process and consider myself lucky to have been aware of it. I've never seen any of my feedback reflected in the plan or in summary comments from engagement meetings. And before I move on, for the record, I think Rosedale is a great community with wonderful people, and I'm not suggesting that Rosedale should be overdeveloped like is being proposed for Renfrew. 2 wrongs don't make a right. My comparisons are only to show flaws and inconsistencies with this plan. This flawed plan should not move forward. This plan needs to be voted down or tabled until it's fixed. Next slide, please. So the goals for great communities in the guidebook, the number 1 first goal is is to promote housing options that are varied, inclusive, and affordable. Sadly, the very first goal of the guidebook is not met with the Northdale Plan. The plan is the opposite of the first goal and, in fact, creates greater disparity between area communities. Next slide, please. So, as you can see from the table, if you look at Renfrew today, you can see it's fairly inclusive. We have 44% more renters than the city average. Our median income is well below the city average. We have double the percentage of renters compared to Rosedale, which is also part of this plan, and our median income is eclipsed by their income. So it's clear to me that Renfrew is doing well in terms of diversity, inclusivity, and variety. Next slide, please. So it should be on the slide with the map. So why does the plan permit such aggressive change in Renfrew, and yet Rosedale's seemingly protected? As you can see, the red areas represent what are called low and mid-scale buildings. These are 6 and 12 stories, which in the context of Renfrew are far from low or mid-scale. Renfrew's on the right, by the way, and Rosedale's on the left. It's interesting that Rosedale has almost no red on the map of that community. Given that Renfrew already has a much more diverse mix of incomes of residents, increasing the density in Renfrew will actually lead to greater disparity between these inner-city neighborhoods. Next slide, please. The Northdale Plan doesn't align with the guidebook goals. The plan amplifies differences between communities, which leads to greater inequality and it needs to be voted down or tabled until after a city election. In addition to the inequity of the plan, there's a lack of inclusion in the process of its development. The city's done a poor job including the public in the process. Countless people I've met were shocked only recently to find out about this plan. Despite what the city might tell itself, the communication for a proposal of this magnitude has been extremely poor. It's quite plausible that poor communication by the city helped breed the misinformation that's been complained about in this process. Today's meeting is a culmination of a process that did not adequately inform residents about what's going on. For those who were aware, this process has ignored contrarian voices, including my own, and the inexcusably poor communication from the city continues up until the very end. Due to poor communication, I almost didn't appear during this session because I was convinced that the Northdale Plan wasn't being reviewed. This was not due to my lack of interest, but was due to city misinformation. Next slide, please. The city website states that the guidebook and Northdale Community's local area plan will be brought forward to a combined meeting of council. This public hearing is another opportunity for citizens and council to ask questions and provide comment. This meeting of council will include a council decision. So it sounds like one decision, the guidebook, right? No, there's going to be a vote today on the Northdale Plan, too. So I wanted to verify, so I checked the March 15th Ward 9 newsletter for clarification. Councillor Jean-Carlo Carra published a gloomy newsletter that stated that the guidebook would be reviewed on March 22nd and that the area plan would be at council sometime before the summer break. This is technically correct, but it's extremely misleading, to the point that I nearly missed this meeting. The councillor holds this plan as
Lockerbie. Mr. Lockerbie,
yeah?
It's important what you're saying, but you are at time. In fact, you're a bit over. I just wanted you to finish that thought. So if you could just give us one sentence to wrap up, please.
Yeah, it's a flawed plan and a broken process, and you can vote with integrity and vote it down, or you can vote for it.
Those are indeed our choices. Thank you very much. I understand that Mr. Claughton, who didn't catch it when who wasn't on the line when I called his name, is here. So if you're here, Mr. Claughton, I'll just add you to the end of this panel. So Mr. Claughton, are you there?
I am.
Go ahead.
Very good. Been running back and forth. It was kind of odd. My name's Tim Claughton. I live in Renfrew. I spoke yesterday as well, and I just want to mention a couple of things. I like the mix that we have in Renfrew, and we've got condominium complexes that have been retrofitted over years. We've got a mix of new duplexes, fourplexes, and single-family homes, and I think it works quite well. And to go with the 6 stories could be a problem. Now, one point that I wanted to make the other night was that right now, on 15th Avenue with the 416 to 420 block. There was a proposal that came before council. It's just off Edmonton Trail and kind of behind where the Husky used to be, just if anyone wants to try to reference where that is. It's 4 lots in off of Edmonton Trail. And the advertisement on it, these are advertised as luxury condos. Okay, so it's a concrete building that is sitting there. It's now shuttered, has not had any activity, yet they used 2 years, close to 2 years of construction, including closing down the alleyway. Now we have a concrete building, complete with an underground park, and there's nothing happening. And this might be one of the examples of what should not go somewhere. Because if it was a fitting unit for the neighborhood and amongst single housing bungalows, then perhaps they would have had the sales and filled that up. But we don't know what's happening with it. It's more or less shuttered, and it's now an eyesore. And I want to make sure that the city is on top of it to understand what will happen and how that will be. As I mentioned yesterday, that would be more suitable directly across the lane from it on the 16th Avenue side where density is available. And there's 4 massive lots there that could be built up and could be quite good. I spoke yesterday, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap up and just say that, the process is the process. And I wanted to forward to clerks the report that I read, which was the Auditor General of British Columbia, when they did a report and discussing what engagement was. And money has been spent to do a report like this. And there's some very interesting reads in it. And I'll send it to the clerks and she can distribute it to the rest of council. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir, and I look forward to reading that myself. So I've got some questions for this panel. Councillor Farkas first.
Thank you, Worship. Just for Mr. Lockerbie, I was wondering if you had other examples of how you believe the city was contributing to misinformation and misunderstanding of this issue.
Well, there's the 2 things that I just mentioned, right? There's the city not being clear. Like that I try to understand this process. It's not clear, and it's confusing because you've got 2 things going on at the same time. You've got the guidebook and you got the North Hill plan. People don't know which is which. The media was focusing only on the guidebook. I don't think there was any focus in the last month on the North Hill plan, and it's happening at the same time. And then there's the city website showing one decision is going to be made, 1 or 2. It's 2. You're doing the first reading and voting on it today. And then there's Councillor Carra's newsletter that was published March 15th, and it says that it's sometime before summer. It is before summer, that's true, but from the same day as the guidebook that he was discussing, and said that it was on March 22nd. So it's just very confusing.
Thank you. And when were you first made aware of the guidebook and the local area plan and all of this going on?
So I was made aware kind of early. So I was, like everyone, I'm involved in the community association, and not everyone is, sorry. But through that, I heard of it early. But I didn't make the distinction that North Hill Growth Plan was our area until my neighbor clarified it to me, who happened to be going to a meeting. So I found out about it in 2019. But yeah, it wasn't initially when I'd heard when I heard that it was the North Hill Growth Plan, I initially was ignoring it because it didn't resonate with me.
And in your opinion, do you feel the majority of residents in the area are aware of this going on in the meeting today?
You know what? I can't really say for sure. I have my personal opinion, and my personal opinion would be no, but I don't know. That's the city's job to do that, right? My opinion, my personal opinion, you know. And yeah.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
I think that's a good point you raise. I think we, at the city, as councillors, as administration, we expect a lot from volunteers like you, but not understanding that practically everyone who's involved with a community association is not paid, and you're volunteers, and it's asking a lot of you if you don't have perhaps the technical expertise or the background and so on. I guess my final question for you, sir, would be, how do you think the city could avoid this kind of fumbling of the ball happening in the future? Because it's obvious there was a breakdown on this issue, and the city has fallen far short of the expectations of Calgarians. So how do you think proceeding with planning and so on, how we could not just rectify this, but going forward better include Calgarians in the decisions that are being made?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say before I answer anything more, I'm here as representing myself. I'm not representing a community association or anything like that. But I think that there are probably experts in marketing that should be able to do a better job. Honestly, I think when I saw North Hill Growth Plan, I thought it was something to do with North Hill Mall. I thought, cool, they're letting us know. And there's a whole science behind marketing, and I think that maybe the city marketing people need to reflect and ask themselves those questions. I'm not an expert on that, and I think that really there's a science behind it, and I think that maybe that needs to be revisited.
Yeah, and I think that's fair comment. In my area, we have the heritage communities, and many people interpret that to mean Heritage Park or the old buildings, that sort of thing, without the understanding that it's actually their community. So thank you for being here, and I really appreciate your time.
Can I say one more thing?
Sorry, if you wanted to respond. Yeah, go ahead.
We are bombarded by junk mail, by leaflets, by pamphlets, by phone calls, by people telling you that you need to pay your taxes with ID cards. This is a world where we're inundated with information, and it has to be very, very blatant to really make an impact. That's it.
Yep, point well taken. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Farkas. Let's go to Councillor Carra, please.
Hi, I just want to weigh in on the sentence in question from my newsletter, and I want to apologize because I agree that it's not clear. I'm under the impression that we talk about the North Hill Plan and other places, but I was grouping the two communities that are getting forward-looking local area plans, if everything goes through, as being Fairview through the Heritage Plan and Renfrew through the North Hill Plan, respectively, both before summer. And I agree that was not clear, Ian, and I apologize for any misinformation or lack of clarity that I might have contributed to there with that sentence. I apologize. It certainly was not my intention to misinform anyone or try and pull the wool over anyone's eyes. And I just want to go on the record for saying that, and I apologize.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Carra. And let us... Oh, I'm sorry. I have Councillor Farrell, please.
Thank you. I'm losing track of who spoke. I think the speaker that was talking about 8th.
That was Ms. Well, we had a couple of them talking about 8th, but I think the one you're thinking of is Ms. Waldy.
Ms. Waldy? Okay, Ms. Waldy, thank you. Yes?
Can you pick
I
her
have
up?
some...
Oh, hold on a moment. We need some people to mute, please. Unless you're Megan Waldy or Councillor Farrell, you should be on mute. Hold on a second. All right, everyone look at their devices. Make sure you're on mute.
Might be...
Okay, there we go. Go ahead, Councillor Farrell.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering, I've got a few amendments that I prepared based on some concerns that I was hearing from my communities. I've sent them to the clerk yesterday. And if we were to pull 8 and 12th, which is in Crescent Heights, but 8th Avenue, into a special study area and put that back for more consultation. Would you participate? Would you be interested in that?
Absolutely, I would love to.
Okay, so we could identify that as a special study area. I mean, we have special study area for heritage, to protect the heritage in these communities, and so we placed bubbles over them. I've got language that actually even strengthened that more. That's an amendment. But the special study area would have to be done quickly. And you would need commitment from the residents. Seems like we've got your attention. I think the previous speaker said something really important, that people get barraged with information, that something they miss things. It's really, I'm not blaming administration at all. It's really hard to pay attention when there's so much coming at us. So we would need a commitment that you'd be like all hands on deck for this work. And it sounds like you're interested.
I definitely am. I'm currently on maternity leave, so I would have to kind of plan around it, but certainly I definitely would want to be involved.
And get your compatriots to participate as well. All right, I'm noodling on a few things. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There we go. Thanks, everyone.